You've heard of dueling banjos, but have you heard of dueling dead luxury cars? I mean D-E-D, dead. Both of these. Let's get started. So these are both dead, Mrs. Wizard. Which one do you want?
Neither.
Neither?
Although I would like the Bentley for some of the parts off of it for my part works.
Part works? The customer's actually going to be selling this, parting it out, or selling it as a parts car. Both of these are dead. This is a 2003 Bentley Arnage red label. It has a 6 3/4 liter V8. This is a 2016 Volvo XC90 with the 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder, and both engines right now as we speak are boat anchors. Dead. They both arrive with the customers hoping for maybe there's a quick fix or maybe there's better news. They've heard bad news, but possibly. But here they could get an honest diagnosis and figure out exactly what's wrong with their car. Unfortunately, the news is terminal for both of them. Let's go ahead and start with the Bentley. So this is the 2003 Bentley red label. I'll talk to you in a minute why the difference is between a red label and a green label. Let's take a look around this thing real quick just to give you guys a quick look at what condition this thing is in. It has a beautiful front end, doesn't it, Mrs. Wizard?
I really like Bentleys.
Yeah, Bentleys are nice. You go around to the side, you can definitely tell it has British flair. The way the shape is, the body line, everything is totally British. It's not an American car, obviously. You can see that the rear end is sitting a little low in the back. The suspension has failed. As you can see here on the side, it has a red label B, and also on the wheels, a red label B. We come around to the back. It's very similar to the Rolls-Royce Silver Seraph, but this is the Arnage. Basically the same body, same tail lights, a lot of the same things. And you can look down that side. It is not wrecked, it's not rusted out or beat up. It's actually in decent condition. Sadly, it is dead. So the difference in the labels is in the early year, or maybe the early years of the Bentley Arnage, you could get a green label which has a BMW V12 in it. The Rolls-Royce Silver Seraph also has this V12. I don't think they ever went to this turbo engine setup, but when you got the red label, the customers were complaining they want the old warhorse back, the old 6 3/4 liter V8. They didn't want that high winding BMW V12. So that's what they put back in here. So red label has the V8, the old Bentley Rolls-Royce engine that's been used for decades. The green label will be a B&W 5.4 liter V12. Let's go ahead and open the bonnet. You can see right there 6.75 liter twin turbo. When they are running, they're very powerful, very torquey engines. They're actually a pretty good engine until you overheat them. Let's go ahead and remove this, all this cladding, all this plastic here, and we'll show you what we found. This was in the front seat, and I got to looking at it. We're trying to figure out if this engine's good or not when it first arrived. And you can see a piece of the radiator neck is still in there, which tells me one thing. This thing blew the radiator neck and lost all of its coolant. We did verify that with the customer. That's what happened. And unfortunately, it was driven or somehow was overheated to the point where it blew the head gasket and did major damage to the engine. I'll go ahead and start it just real quick so you can hear it. It's not going to hurt it any worse than it already is. The engine is no good. Actually, I'm not going to let it warm up, but when you do let it warm up, like it kind of was when the tow truck driver brought it off the truck, you could hear the engine was knocking. It's bad. But let's just start it just for a few seconds so you can hear it uneven running.
Oh, Wizard, it sounded like it ate a Harley Davidson there.
It sounds really bad. In fact, when the tow truck driver started it to pull it off the truck, there's things when you've been a mechanic for a long time that you can just hear in the background. You could be sitting at a restaurant eating and you can hear someone crank their car. And I just heard the uneven cranking. It should be even. And I knew 2 or 3 of those cylinders don't have any compression. It's the only way it makes that weird sound. Let's head back to the exhaust pipes. So you're wondering why we're back here at the exhaust tips. I won't let it run long enough, but if you do, the little bit of coolant that's still in the engine block actually starts blowing out here. You can smell it. It smells really sweet. And if you taste the water that's coming out, it tastes like antifreeze. It's on the passenger side specifically. One thing I also noticed when I removed this oil cap here, while it was running, you could feel crankcase ventilation stuff going on here, and whenever you turn it off, it smelled like antifreeze coming out of the crankcase. It's very likely water has gotten into there. It's maybe the knocking noise we're hearing. I'm not going to go any further and diagnose that. I already know this engine is shelled out. Sometimes with these, with blown head gaskets, you can catch it in time and just put new head gaskets and redo it, all that. But I think even more damage is done to this than just the head gaskets. Let me show you where it actually blew the radiator hose off. All this damage and cost is just from this one little broken neck right there. You can see the actual jagged piece of the neck there sticking out. And the other side of the hose went here to the thermostat neck, right in there. I would assume when this happened, they probably knew it. They saw steam everywhere. Whether they kept driving and damaged it worse, or I don't know the exact story. I don't know what exactly happened, but I do know the damage that was done. Coolant coming out of the exhaust pipe. I can smell antifreeze in the crankcase. We have a complete blown off radiator hose, and we know we're low compression on 2 or 3 cylinders. This thing, unfortunately, is a goner. So we know the suspension is collapsed on this vehicle. It's not as complex as the earlier Silver Shadows or Silver Spurs or the Bentley 8s or things like that. But it is very, very complicated still and very expensive. The fluid is leaked out. There's something going on back there. And then we have a dead engine. I actually follow a guy sometimes on YouTube called Rolls-Royce Car Nut. And rarely, when any of these issues arise, does a vehicle leave his shop for less than 30 grand. People don't work on these cars for 75 bucks an hour. They're usually $250, $300 an hour. The parts on these aren't going to be 50 bucks. They're going to be 500 and 1,000 and 2,000 bucks for all the parts. It's so fast adds up to be 20 or 30 grand or more. Depending on what damage we find, the engine could be completely shelled out. It could be 40 grand to completely sort all the problems on this car. And if you get the engine running, you may take it out and find out the transmission's slipping or something else is wrong. Where do you stop? We talked with the customer. Customer's very understanding in the situation. When we started mentioning those numbers, he agreed. He's like, I figured it probably would be something like that. And no, I'm not interested in going that far. He's like, what are these cars worth? So I'll show you. Here's one here. It's roughly $22,000. Here's another one, $9,000. You can get these from 10, 15, 20 range, depending on what condition you want them in. The $20,000 one's probably a good running one, drives. Why would you put 30 grand or possibly 40 grand into this car when for almost half as much you can just go buy a whole other Arnage? And the customer agreed. He's like, yep, you know what? I'm just going to sell this thing as a parts car. There's no way in hell I'm putting 30 grand into this car. He said, I don't even know if I want to put 10 into it. He's like, we're done. I said, good. That's a good call to be done with this thing. So he's sending a tow truck. Will be picking this up. It'll be leaving soon. But before it left, I definitely wanted to see and show you guys how a simple little hose that broke off totaled this car. It is completely DED dead. It is done. But we're not done yet. Just wait. There's more. Just like I said, there's dueling banjos. We have another contender in the ring. Let's head on over to the Volvo. There can be many weeks go by in the shop where we have pretty much just routine repairs. Things come and go. Bad radiator, bad alternator, oil leaks. Everybody's happy. But these are the weeks that Crazy D in the office hates the most, when it's 3 and 4 phone calls of, your car is dead, your car is dead. It's over, game over, bro. He hates those calls. He really does not like to make those calls. And I understand it's disheartening. It can really make people's heart drop into their stomach. It's like, oh my God, my car is done. Now, the Bentley is not worth fixing, but this car is very likely worth fixing. It's actually been to a Volvo dealer. The customer brought it there and they said, hey, your engine is done, bro. It's done. You need a new engine. He was like, I don't know about that. I'm going to take this to Omega. I want to get a second opinion before we dive in. Unfortunately, they were right. Let's go ahead and take a quick look around this one and then we'll get the hood open. This one's a nice Volvo, isn't it, Mrs. Wizard?
It is. I love how it has the slash Volvo on the grill there.
Yep. This one's in pretty decent shape. It's a 2016, like I mentioned. It just has a little over 100,000 miles. Unfortunately, there was bad news for this car. You can see down here, it's not wrecked or caved in or beat up. It's an XC90 T6, and body-wise and interior-wise is actually pretty nice. But let's go ahead and jump under the hood. So I have a few tools here. I'm going to show you some things here in a minute. We've actually already diagnosed it, but I want to show you the steps that we went to figure out what's wrong here. I'm going to start this up just for a brief moment to let you guys hear the unequal cranking noise, just like we heard on the Bentley, which is telltale there is a cylinder or more without compression. We'll let you see it run and see that it's got a dead cylinder. I'll go ahead and start it real quick.
Oh, Wizard, that engine was just jittering around in there.
Yeah, you could hear, it was very brief, but you could hear it was cranking really strange, and then it finally started, and it's shaking pretty bad. We did scan for codes. It has cylinder 3, is not doing anything, and the news is very, very bad on this one. I'll go ahead and show you some of the steps we did to figure out what's going on. First, we took off this little foam engine cover here. I already have this coil disconnected. Here's cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4. Cylinder 3 being right here. So let's go ahead and get that coil removed. These have the 14mm spark plugs. They're not 5/8 like Grandpa's Chevy truck. These are 14 millimeters, so I happen to have this correct socket for this. These go in kind of at an angle. One thing I noticed that was bad news when I pulled the spark plug out is the entire electrode and everything is completely soaked in oil. Also, antifreeze. So I'll go get the borescope camera and we'll take a look down in there and see what we see. By the way, Danielson also looked at this one, did a compression test on that cylinder. It's not even 1 psi. It is 0. Completely dead. Let me go grab the test schlong. Look, Mrs. Wizard, it's got a test schlong.
Okay, sure, dear.
See the schlong?
That is quite the schlong.
It's a very good schlong. Okay, let me clean the tip. Okay, let's go ahead and see what we see here. So we can see a little bit of burn spots on the top of the piston, like right in through there. Let me go ahead and go to the side camera. You can see right there, that valve has a hole burned out, and there's a chunk of the valve that has come out, and look at the scoring on the cylinder walls, guys. Completely wiped out that cylinder. And there's another surprise. Also, I don't know the exact reason, but when we would pressure test the cooling system, coolant would come through the hole in the valve and just fill up into the piston. So the cylinder wall is wiped out. There had coolant on the side of the cylinder wall, and we turned the engine by hand to see if it even would wipe the coolant off the side. It didn't even touch it. The coolant just stayed there like nothing touched it. That tells me that area of the cylinder wall is getting no compression. The rings aren't even touching that anymore. So there's coolant getting in, a burn valve, and a cylinder completely unusable, unrebuildable, wiped out. This is one of the situations where I agree with the dealer. They said, can these problems be fixed? Possibly. It will cost as much or more than a new engine to pay for the parts and the labor for somebody to actually go in and fix this stuff. The cylinder wall, that may have ruined the short block, the actual block itself, which we'd have to buy another block. You buy a block and pistons and rings and valves and timing chains, and you have exceeded the cost of just buying a whole new engine. That's the way it works today. Nobody likes to hear that. People get pissed off when they hear that. Well, you should be able to fix that engine. Not today, you don't. Not on new engines, you don't. And it has 100,000 miles on it. I don't know the exact cost. I don't know what the dealership told them as far as what it's going to cost to fix this. But we're going to refer them back to the dealer, because the only place to get one of these engines, you don't get a Jasper Volvo engine. That doesn't even exist. Nobody rebuilds these. Nobody has these. Only the dealer will be able to get one of these engines. And if they sell the engine to us, they're going to mark it up to us. And by the time we get all the prices together and the labor, we'll be at as much or more than the dealer will charge. Because they're going to mark up their engine to us more than they probably would to this person who owns this car. So it doesn't even make any financial sense for us to put a new engine in this car. It will be going back to the dealer. As far as is it worth it, that'll have to be discussed between the dealer and the owner of the car. How much possibly do they owe on the car? How much is it going to cost to put a new engine in? What is the value of the car? Those are all the things that are going to have to be figured up at the dealership. I know what damage is done to this engine, but I don't know why. Why is there a hole in the valve? I could kind of start to figure that out until the fact that we have antifreeze coming through that hole in the valve. And I'm like, what's going on there? And then the cylinder wall is wiped out, and then we have all these other issues going on. I really don't know what happened exactly here. I would have to pull the engine apart to find the smoking gun. We are not going to be doing that, obviously. It's not worth it. We know on this one, it is not worth fixing this car. Even by a stretch, it is not worth it at all. This one very likely could be worth it. You can't go buy another XC90 for probably what you'll have to get the engine replaced. Kind of sucks today, dueling banjos, dueling dead luxury cars. That's kind of what the theme of this video was. And like I said, Crazy D has had a bad week because he's just been making your car's dead, bro, your car's dead, bro, over. It's just like, man, this sucks. I'm like, hey, I know. It really is a bummer. So this is one of those situations as well. As a shop owner, you don't just fix cars. You actually become a financial advisor to the owners of these cars. They're asking, is it worth it? I have to present the numbers and say yes or no based on my judgment, what I find out what's wrong and all these other issues. They have to decide what they're going to do from there, but I have to present to them, is it worth it or not? Yes, possibly. Absolutely not. Those are my judgments on these cars. So if you're curious what kind of tools we're probably not going to use on these cars, but we do use on all the other cars in the shop, including some of the wrenches and the Techlong and things that I use, in our Amazon affiliates, link in the description below. If you purchase anything there, we get a small cut and we really appreciate it. Also check out Mrs. Wizard's Way. She's got videos going on there, really cool videos. There's a link in the description for that as well. And make sure to hit the subscribe button here because I love to share these crazy stories with you guys. Thanks for watching.